Good morning and welcome to Sunup. I'm Dave Deacon and we're talking wheat varieties this morning. David, let's look back at the 2016 wheat crop. What was the big winner in wheat varieties?
So if we look at, we have a number of varieties that we've had planted at a lot of our locations across the state. And this year we have 17 different locations reported. And of those 17 different locations where we had the varieties planted at those locations, the top variety this year was actually Bentley.
Wow.
And followed closely by some other varieties such as WB Grainfield, TAM 204, actually Gallagher and Iba. So again, Bentley came out on top, but the WB Grainfield was a close second, and we're talking about a 5 bushel spread here, from about 68 bushel to 63 bushel within those top 5 varieties.
What made Bentley such a great variety this last year?
Well, I think just the overall weather conditions. We had conditions this year at critical times where we had more ideal temperatures as well as plentiful moisture. We had, especially during grain fill, where we had a little bit more lower than normal temperatures, but plenty of moisture during that time, and that just led to more ideal conditions for favoring kernel filling.
Now moving into the 2017 crop, what are some of the better varieties producers should be looking at?
Well, fortunately, based on a lot of our variety trial results, there's actually a number of different varieties that producers can plant. And looking at some of our other variety trial locations where we have different regional trials where we have all the varieties that are entered into the trial. So we have 4 different locations spread across the state. And some of the varieties that also did well in those areas, in addition to those 5 that I just mentioned, were Joe and Larry and Tatanka out of Kansas, LCS Chrome, and Cy Flint and Cy Monument. So again, a lot of different options that performed well in terms of the grain side that our producers can plant for this coming year.
No, and a couple of those names that you mentioned there are actually white varieties.
The one is Joe. Joe is actually a hard white variety out of Kansas, and yeah, again, our regional trial locations are spread across the state, but we think more of, and it did well across those, but we think more of a hard white wheat production in Oklahoma, kind of, at least at the present moment, more focused around that kind of that Enid area. And another variety that wasn't at all the locations, but is from Oklahoma State, is Stardust. And it was at the Lahoma trial, and this year it did do pretty well overall, but it was outshadowed just a little bit by some of those other varieties in terms of yield production.
Now, moving forward into 2017, some producers may be thinking, I'm going to start with the intention of grain and then possibly switch to grazing. What should producers be thinking about whenever they select a variety for that?
Well, I think coming into this year, there's going to be a lot of attention paid to the cattle side here, and a lot of trying to get a lot of full forage production out. So I think producers are going to be thinking about varieties that are going to come out of the ground quickly, do well early on in September here, and produce a lot of fall forage, as well as produce a lot of forage in the spring. So producers are going to be looking for a variety that, again, is going to be good in that dual purpose type system, but also, and one of those characteristics is one that is going to be later to first hollow stem, or that time where if you are in that dual purpose, is going to be one where it's got a few more days where we can graze those cattle before we need to pull them off before we start reducing our yield levels.
Back in 2016 on the crop, there were some issues with disease pressure. Can you talk about some of the varieties that faced that? So
yeah, this past year, like the 2015, like last year, the biggest disease was stripe rust, and we saw that was the one that was pretty well widespread throughout the state. And some of the varieties that we do have varieties that don't have the best disease resistance for that pathogen. One of them is a variety such as like our Ruby Lee. But then we do have other varieties that do perform very well even when that pathogen is present, because it has good disease resistance, such as like a Billings. But if you were out there scouting and trying to get a fungicide application put on at the right time for a variety like a Ruby Lee, it definitely paid for itself and helped protected a lot of that yield potential that Ruby Lee does have when we were able to try and manage it.
Okay, thank you much. David Marburger, small grain specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And for more information about what we talked about, visit our website, sunup.okstate.edu.